Hello, good evening and welcome. It's Open Your Mind Radio and it's Alan James. It's Sunday the 28th of July 2013 and guess what? We've no Stephen George tonight. Unfortunately, Stephen is away on holidays. He's taking a few days off. He works hard during the week. So you just have myself tonight, but as usual, we do have a few things that we're going to go through and we're going to be talking about a number of things. And the guest on tonight is going to be a chap called Guy Taylor, who has been given a lot of run around with the banks and he's been fighting back with the banks. So we're going to be talking to Guy in a few minutes about what he's been up to and what's been going on. But for the time being, as we don't have any Steve, I'm pushing all the buttons here tonight, and also we have a problem with the OYM player. The OYM player is acting up, so we're not running on the OYM player. So obviously, you know, if it doesn't work, obviously try the UWS player or the MSI player on the website. You'll get us there. But as Steve normally says, Mary, tell us what the communication channels are.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Now, I'm going to have hands everywhere because the studio is actually set up for two people. So I've computers one end and computers the other end. So I'll be moving around. So we'll try and get to the two chat facilities on MSI and obviously OYM as well. So bear with me. I'm only one person. And I still have that little bit of cough which is hanging around. It's not going anywhere. So before we get Guy on, we are hoping to have Paddy on as well, but Paddy's not available, unfortunately. But Guy should be able to fill in the blanks of what we need to talk about and what's going on. So we'll bring Guy in a few minutes. But as usual, just have a few things that I want we want to mention. Now, apparently, I don't know whether you heard it in the news, the United Arab Emirates have pardoned a Norwegian woman who was sentenced to jail for illicit sex after she reported being raped by a colleague while on a visit to Dubai, the Norwegian foreign minister said. So this girl was raped. She went to the police to say that she's raped, and they were going to do it for illicit sex, because sex before marriage. Wow, I couldn't believe that when I read the story. I mean, talk about behind the times. Unbelievable. But apparently she's been let off, and they've let her go. They've given her a pardon, and she's probably making her way back to Norway. But I think that will be the last time she goes there to the United Arab Emirates. I mean, that's just an incredible story. Okay, and the other story that I want to chat about, I've been doing a lot of research into the pole shifts at the moment. There's loads of talk about the pole shift and what's going on. We know the weather patterns have been changing, and even now, I'm looking out the window, it's on and off raining. It's really humid, very warm, but it's raining. The other day we had a bit of a monsoon. Some people are saying that the Maya were off by a year. Maybe they misread the actual Maya calendar, because maybe the calendar was correct. It's just the way it was interpreted was probably off by a year. But anyway, again, do the research in this and check it out. But one of the things there's so much hysteria going on and so many things going on that we're getting tied up in with the banks and everything else. And are they just trying to keep us distracted? You know, while other things are going on outside, I don't know. You know, there are people who've said to me, I've posted a couple of things on the Facebook page regarding pole shift, and one person said to me, "Oh, I have enough to get on with the banks. You know, why are you talking about the pole shift stuff?" Well, you know, it's all hand in hand. It's things that are going on. It's information. If you don't want to check it out, don't check it out. But I think it's important to actually check it out and see what you think yourself. Now, here's a kind of dilemma for you, and I want everybody to think about this, okay? If you were Barack Obama and your experts came up to you and said, "Barack, we've just found out there's a planet coming into our solar system. It's coming around our sun, and it's going to come up near the Earth, and it's going to have a massive effect on the planet, and a lot of people are going to get killed." If you were Barack Obama, would you go and tell people straight away, or would you not say anything? You know, that is a kind of a dilemma question. Now, I did ask a few people this, and the people I asked all said the same thing. They said, no, we wouldn't tell them, because there's nothing they could do. I mean, you're not going to get into the underground bases, and I'm not even sure whether the underground bases will be safe anyway. So, but it's a kind of, you know, it's one of them scruple questions. What would you do? So, you know, I'd be curious. You know, you can let us know in the chat facility if you want. Now, normally we go over to Steve's week, but as we know, Steve's not here. He's off on holiday. So just a couple of things that I have down before we get the guest on. I've seen there's some documentation about the benefits. I've seen a documentary during the week about the benefits of cannabis hemp oil. You know, we had Ricky Simpson on last week, and the amount of people that have used cannabis hemp oil to cure cancer and other diseases. Well, apparently, the government is seeking to legalise some cannabis-based products over here in Ireland. They says the Department of Health has said it will bring forward legal proposals later this year or early next year to allow cannabis-based medical products to be prescribed over here. Now, don't all get too excited over it. It's probably going to be very, very basic. It's probably going to be that stuff that they have on the NHS over in the UK for MS sufferers, but it's a start. It is definitely a start if they're going to be doing that. And the other thing, before we get the guest on, is, I don't know whether you heard this, but, and it's nothing got to do with New World Order or anything like that, but it just said that the French have lost their accent of love. As the Irish lilt is voted world's sexiest, there was a time when the Frenchman only had to order a pint of beer and women would collapse at his feet with desire. Well, those days are, how you say, finny. The Irish accent was yesterday voted the world's sexiest, knocking the French off the top spot which they've held for decades. So the Irish accent, apparently, is very romantic. I don't know how you work that one out, and I don't know who gave him a big brown envelope full of money, but I definitely I don't get that at all. I don't see how the Irish accent is sexy, but maybe because I'm Irish, I don't see it. Maybe somebody from outside Ireland can tell me why they think the accent is sexy. Anyway, interesting all the same. Okay, so what we're going to do is going to bring our guests in now. We've kind of short information to talk about, because as I say, Steve's not here, and we normally have Steve's week. So just a few things that I just want to talk about that I've seen during the week. But I'd like to bring in our guest now. This chap is called Guy Taylor, and Guy has been having a nightmare with banks, and obviously he's been using the system as well to get his own back in the banks and do various things. But we're going to get more information off Guy and get some history from him. So, good evening, Guy. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Alan.
Thanks a lot for coming on to the show. I have heard about a couple of things that you've been doing with banks, and I believe you were on UK Column, and you've been on one or two other radio stations as well. But for the people who don't know you, and for our OYM listeners, can you give us a bit of background on who Guy Taylor is and the hassles that you went through with the banks?
No problem. My name's Guy Taylor, and back in the 80s and early 90s, I was a naughty boy. I basically was more of a traveller sort of person. I didn't pay taxes. In my life, I never paid taxes, and I never claimed benefits. And then my father was a scrap merchant, and in 2005, I inherited his estate, which is various commercial buildings, domestic buildings, a manor house, and a couple of public houses. When I inherited all this stuff, all of a sudden I realised that the pressures that normal people were under, because all of a sudden I had people begging me for money from everywhere, councils, various utility companies, and all these bills and things that I was receiving. As a diligent and competent man, I started investigating, and the more I investigated, the more I found that they were all fraudulent. So I started going along the Freeman path about 2007, and investigating everything that was being brought to me, and challenging it in courts. What happened then was that, of course, because we had so many properties, I was fighting on all fronts, fighting on too many fronts, really. And, here we are today. I've had constant court battles. I've had 14 court battles with N-Power alone. So, I'm pretty up to date with fighting the corporation, fighting the machine itself.
Right, okay. And how are you getting on with it?
Well, I mean, the first thing, as you said about the banks, when my father died in 2005, I took out a loan thereafter, and for £824,000, paid death duties, and there's huge bills around the estates to pay. And And then when I did that, it all was fine. But then I got informed that the bank had taken out another loan in 2008 and paid off the first loan. And I started questioning it, and that's really what really drove me even more, because the more I started questioning, I didn't take this loan out. It was obviously a fraudulent signature on the document. I contacted the bank and said, I'll continue paying the loan, but can you please tell me why I would have possibly taken out another £80,000 on this date? And when did we agree this? And when was the manifestation of intent? When was, were there any letters between us or any phone calls to establish it? And of course they wouldn't address it. And so I continued paying, but then I issued them a commercial lien, basically to get the answers out of them, because I believed I was being defrauded.
So what I heard, and obviously you just said it there, was that they used your signature without your permission to pay off a loan. Yeah.
And what I think the situation is, Alan, I don't know, but what I think the situation is, but bank managers, I'm told, depending on how far up they are on their field, get 2% of loans. So if they get £1 million loan out somewhere, they get 20 grand for issuing that out. So the presumption is, and what appears to be going on around the place, because there are a lot of people in contact with me about this, is that the bank, when you take a loan out, the bank manager gets his 2%. But then, of course, if he takes another loan out and pays that loan off, he gets another 2% of that again. And you may not be any the wiser for it.
So, a bank manager gets 2% of every loan that's taken out?
Well, again, I'm not saying this is correct, but I'm saying that this is my information, that for if a bank manager gives £1 million worth of credit out, that his bonus would be £20,000 on that 2%.
Wow. I wonder, I was just thinking in the back of my mind, Simon the White Rabbit, who apparently was an ex-bank manager, I wonder if he's aware of that or whether he's come across it.
Well, Simon, I know Simon well. He's a brilliant guy, and I don't know. I haven't spoken to him recently. Although Simon's like myself. He's fighting the fight where he's fighting it, and we have been involved in stuff, and that is certainly something I would ask Simon. Yeah.
Okay, what are the things that you were dealing with and that you successfully sorted out? Give us an example of a fight that you took on, say, with somebody, and then this is what you did, and this was the... Because, I always kind of say, knowledge is the book, wisdom is the experience. And and you don't get the wisdom unless you actually do it. Knowing what to do is fine, but unless you actually do it, you won't get the experience of doing it. So, if you've done this... give us a kind of an overview of a couple of the fights you've done and how successful you are with them.
No problem. In fact, what you said there is correct. My uncle used to say, a mechanic knows how a car works, but he doesn't know why it works. So, yeah, what you're saying is right.
That's a good one, yeah.
Well, what the situation on one of the back years ago now was, we owned a public house which had like a load of flats above it. And it was called the Sportsman in Hereford. And when my father died, of course, my father had been paying direct debit from his account for all his bills. And when my father died, myself and my wife Linda were going through all the accounts, and we discovered that for 5 years he'd been paying both British Gas and N-Power, the electric on this building, for the same supply. So we checked through and found the contract that it was supposed to be with British Gas. So I contacted N-Power and said, right, you're not, what are you doing charging me the same as the British Gas? And I demanded the money back, which was about £16,000 with interest.
Wow.
What N-Power, of course, would say, yes, no problem, we'll put you through to someone, and hi, my name's David, I'm investigating this for you. And what would happen is after 2 or 3 weeks, David would disappear and I'd be back to square one. Who are you and what's your problem? So what I decided to do, I decided not to pay any money on any N-Power properties we had, that were serviced by N-Power. I decided not to pay them their bills.
Okay.
So of course, this went through to the point where there's some yards that we owned, which are empty, they're vacant yards, and a house, and I didn't pay the bills, so they sent what they call a human rights notification, saying that if the court we're going to cut off the electric because the bill hadn't been paid. So this was back in 2007, I expect it was. 2008 perhaps. No, 2007. So I went down to the court and demanded to go into the court to stop it. And they said, no, all you do is you pay the bill here. I said, no, I don't owe the bill. So I said, I demand redress. So I got a hearing inside one of these small corporate days where the utility companies hire the court and rubber stamp everything. And I went in there and I explained to the magistrates that I had what is effectively a lien against Empire because I could prove that they owed me in excess of £16,000. So they could take off whatever bills they claimed for the other properties against that £16,000. So it got adjourned for a month, and when we went back a month's time, British Gas, Empire, didn't turn up. And so as they didn't turn up, I won the case, and they said that they couldn't switch the electric off in either of these premises. Well, what happened after that was every 3 months I'd get this letter from the machine saying, you have to go back to court because it's another human rights notification. So, of course, I went back and said, well, this is ridiculous. What am I doing coming back here? It's already been an opinion has already been made, because I don't consider magistrates courts, an opinion has already been made, and you would need an appeal or a judicial review to bring it back to court. And the court agreed with me, and off I went again, and I said I'll demand costs next time. 3 months later, we had to go back again. Now, this happened altogether 14 times.
Wow.
And what you've got to appreciate is that if I hadn't turned up at one of those hearings, they would have rubber stamped it, and they would have cut the electric off. So I had to keep appearing. So in the end, what I did, on about the 13th occasion of this, I took a large group of people involved in lawful rebellion over here, Roger Hayes, Veronica Chapman, a gang of us went to the court, and I had said to the judge the time before that if he didn't dismiss this case permanently, that the next time I stood in front of him, I would arrest him. And I gave him £1 million commercial lien or a bit of obligation for that. And then, lo and behold, 3 months later, I get called up again. So we went to the court, and of course the police are there because the police usually protect the judges to stop me from arresting them. And so we went in, and I said, and the judge didn't come out, and he sent 3 magistrates in. So the magistrates came in, and I said, if you don't dismiss this case today, I will arrest you. And he said, we've got to go back to consider our verdict. And I said, I've got to consider whether I'll arrest you, and trust me, I will. So they left the room, and then they came out and dismissed it. So that was. But the police were asking at that time, what can you arrest them under? And so I said, well, I can arrest them under unlawful administration of their oath if they claim to be on their oath, and went through the whole process with them on that. It's a different subject. But so I mean, at the end of the day, we got that, and so I haven't paid those bills for 4 years. So we've had success on that. But I mean, I do court cases. There isn't a week goes by really I don't do a court case.
Wow. Well, that's brilliant that you have success from it. And again, it's nerve-wracking going into a court. I mean, I normally go down to, every now and again, I go down to the local court, and I just sit just behind the actual solicitors. And I was getting to a stage there, I was going in there, people were recognising me and waving. I was getting to be a familiar face, and I'm sure the judge that was there, seeing me sitting in the public gallery, and probably thought, well, if this guy is actually not coming up in front of me, why is he sitting there and making notes?
Good point. I mean, that's a good point, and that's what I've been advising people to do this. Well, saying to people should do this. If we go in and start taking notes, I mean, we don't even get court reporters anymore. And so you go in, take notes, when you're there, looking after the public's interest, to see what goes on in these places. And I mean, unlike yourself, I do love going into court, and it might sound mad, but because, as I say, as a younger man, I was at the Old Bailey for 2 months on trial, and I was already doing 5 years, and they told me I'd get another 10 if I was found guilty. So, although I'm older now, a lot older, I going in for these silly matters and knowing that these people are acting out of their oath of office and have got no subject matter jurisdiction, it actually, I'm engaging in it, and because they've been sending me down the stairs when I was a younger man for trivial things, and now I realise that it's them all breaking the law. I'm quite keen to put it back on them.
Yeah, well, I kind of did it from an education point of view, but just kind of if the judge ever did turn around to me and say, well, why are you here in the court? I'll just say, I'm just taking notes. Just to rattle them a bit.
Yeah.
That's the idea. Just if he sees me taking notes and he's kind of wondering, who is this guy coming in all the time? I would have said to him, well, I'm just taking notes,
Well, of course, up in Belfast, you can't even take notes in the magistrates' courts, because I've been doing lots of court cases in Belfast recently, and they won't even let you people aren't even allowed to take notes in there. There are people have actually filmed me in the courts over the last few weeks there, but technically you're not even allowed to take notes in there. We're not supposed to. But of course, what they do is the first thing they threaten you with is contempt of court.
Yeah.
And to threaten you with contempt of court is in itself a contempt of court, because they're not courts. They're unlawful administrative hearings. They're operating outside the boundaries afforded them by their own legislation.
Yeah.
And as long as you know that that's not a court and the guy isn't a judge, then you cannot be done for contempt of court. We've absolutely closed that door, because these are trust meetings. They're unlawfully administered without your consent. And we've actually closed down the contempt angle. So, and I wouldn't say that lightly. But, if you do your homework on the contempt, and in fact, if you go to FMOTL and look at contempt of court and what work's been done on it, you'll discover that quite quickly that you can't be done for contempt of court in a statutory environment.
Well, we've had a strange thing happen during the week. Eamon Gilmore, who's the Labour leader down over here in Ireland, apparently, and Michael D. Higgins, who's the President of Ireland, I think more so Eamon Gilmore, is apparently agnostic, right? Now, if he's agnostic, how can he put his hand up and swear an oath under God to the Royal Oireachtas, the government, Dáil Éireann? How can he do that if he's agnostic? So, it's all a game with these people. And that's the thing, it's all kind of smoke and mirrors and sleight of hand. And as people begin now, I've noticed an awful lot of people, due to, people struggling, beginning to learn the law because they have to. And I think that's beginning to frighten the establishment, because people are beginning to know what to say to the police, what to say to the court, in the courts, and to the judges.
Well, that's exactly right. The last time I was in Belfast court, and this is the sort of little template of the sort of situation. Because when I go into court, I've spent hundreds of days in court, from my previous history as well. And when you go into court, the place to take these people, they're very comfortable in their environment. And like, as I say, in Belfast, it's very slick. And the first thing I try to do is I take them to a place that they're not used to, they've never been before. And if you do that, then you've been to these sort of places before, but they certainly haven't. And so, yes, it's putting the wind at them. And when we were in Belfast last time, it ended up, we had 3 police officers, 5 security and 3 prison officers surrounding me and Roger Hayes. We had a 2-hour confab with the judge, who said it was Alice in Wonderland. And we said, yeah, we agree. And we threatened to arrest him and all the rest of the usual stuff. But the funny thing is, the police and the security staff are stood there and they're thinking, why aren't they arresting these guys for contempt of court? And we were representing someone else. And what they tend to, Paddy McElroy, and what they tend to do is it's all smoke and mirrors, like you said, Alan. They'll chuck up a red herring, like they'll say, if you want to represent Mr. McElroy, you'll have to be a Mackenzie friend. And I said, well, that divorce case has got absolutely nothing to do with this. We're standing here under common law, and I'm a common law intervener. And he said, well, I've got to make a decision. And I said, well, you haven't got the subject matter jurisdiction to deal with anything, so we're not consenting for you to make a decision. And of course, the whole time, for the whole of this process, the prison officers were in hysterics. The police were there because we called them. We preempted and said we thought this man was going to try and get these security officers to commit violence on us and throw us out. And so we'd like them to go there. And when we asked the judge if he was on his oath and all the rest of it, he said he doesn't have to say. And we said, right, okay, if you're not on your oath, then if you're on your oath, then you'll be arrested under the unlawful administration of an oath contrary to Section 13, and if you're not on your oath, we'll arrest you for perverting the course of justice and impersonating a public official. And Roger said to the police officers, officers, get your notebooks out and take notes because this man's guilty of treason. The judge shouted, please don't, and pleaded with the police. And, of course, it caused all this, but of course these people have got to be questioning what's going on. Why are these people, they're obviously talking something, they perhaps don't understand what we're saying a lot of the time, but they're realising that these guys, they're not the people they thought they were.
Yeah, exactly. I heard that you and Roger, with Paddy, wrecked the judge's head. I mean, he didn't know what day of the week it was with what you did, apparently.
Well, on that occasion, because what's happened is that the first time I went over there, I didn't know what to expect. I was asked to go over there because Paddy's a very wealthy guy. He owns property all over the city centre of Belfast, and it's as the artist taxi driver says, this isn't a recession, it's a robbery. And what they're trying to do is, if you owe more than a couple of £1,000, they'll take you down the bankruptcy process. Well, of course, you're fighting this stuff all day long if you're someone involved in lots of business, as it were.
Yeah.
And if you're working for the machine, you work bank managers or things like that, then you're working as like some sort of socialist type gang. But for the independent property owners, they're getting raped. And so when we went over there the first time, we went and dealt with a case with a master in the High Court in Belfast, and I got thrown out of there. But we then went into the Magistrates' Court and on another day for Paddy, and basically they just don't know how to, they're not used to this the stuff that we're doing over in the UK. They were obviously absolutely naive to. I mean, I stood there and said, this man, and pointed to Paddy in the public gallery, is an asset to this city, and if you want to give him a criminal record, then you better be 12 of his peers present, and you better be on your oath of office. And of course, she just didn't know where to go with that, so she, booted me out. And then 6 weeks later, I had to go back again, and then that time I thought, well, they might have checked up on me and found out what my modus operandi is in the court.
Yeah.
So I took Roger over. And, of course, Roger does it in a very eloquent way, and he speaks, he's very well spoken, Roger. And so Roger started shouting at the judge, don't you ignore me, because he was trying to ignore what was going on. And he got very cowed, the judge, and then started picking on the prosecutor, almost like in a pecking order.
Yeah.
And what the Irish boy said to me and Roger after was, we reckon that judge probably went to public school, and his headmaster was probably spoken in an accent like Roger, very well spoken. Mm. And it probably took him back to them days. but so then the next time we went, we tried to change it again, because at the end of the day, you're going into one of these meetings. It's a trust meeting. It's not much of a trust. They don't even trust you enough to tell you it's a trust. Mm-hmm. They're all operating outside the boundaries afforded them by legislation, and if basically, you can stop them, but all it does, it just kicks it down the road for another day. It doesn't, and so we've been looking for the silver bullet for all this, and we're coming pretty close to it now. I mean, I'll explain to you after. We've got something I'd like to inform people about anyway concerning this.
Well, well, it's up to you whether you want to, if you want to talk about that. Now, I know a little bit behind Paddy's case. I don't know whether, do you want to talk about it, or do you want to do you want to leave it? I mean, it's up to you. I don't know.
No, it's not a problem. Paddy's case was Paddy started coming into this knowledge about common law and started understanding stuff and realising that he was getting ripped off, as are a lot of people. Yeah. And so, of course, once you know yourself, it's the Matrix situation. Once you've taken the one pill, it's hard to go back into the other world. But
well, what we normally say, Guy, is that when you pull over the curtain a little bit and you see what's going on, you have to pull the rest of the curtain over.
Yeah. And Paddy's, he's a brave man for actually, drawing a line in the sand with it and challenging it. Yeah. But of course, once you start challenging it, I always say, if it ain't simple, you haven't thought about it long enough. But the simplest thing, even like the legal fiction situation, it took me couple of years to get my head clearly round it, because you get an identity crisis. Am I me, or am I a piece of paper? And we all do, yeah. We all get this identity crisis.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And of course, Paddy was already locked into situations with, the corporate system. But the problem he'd had was with the actual Northern Irish Tourist Board, who obviously, he's got this couple of 100-bedroom hostel in the town centre, the Lynn Hostel, and what they'd done is they'd sent an email, got sent from allegedly a guest that was, disgruntled, and wrote off to TripAdvisor saying it was a terrible place and all the rest of it. Well, when they came round to Paddy's hostel down in Kent Street, when they went around there, they said, we want to come in and do a voluntary inspection. And of course he wasn't, he refused, because he said, no, there's been a mandatory one and I'm not allowing you access. So the next thing is the fire brigade gone down there with the police and hatcheted their way through doors. And next thing is he's got a private prosecution against him, which is what it is. It was the Northern Irish Tourist Board against him. And that was why I got involved at that stage. And so, yeah, that's basically the situation with it. But, of course, we're looking at setting up the alternative Northern Irish Tourist Board, because we've since found out that, this email came from California, and it was only set up for that email. And it was by someone called himself Brona Bronte. And as I said to the judge, it may as well be Charlotte Bronte, in Wuthering Heights.
Yeah.
Because they just done this against him. The local Freemasonry or whatever are just trying to develop the sites all around Belfast, as they are everywhere. And because they're working for this big machine, they're not men enough to do anything themselves. They're causing everybody problems. So Paddy refused them entry, and then he ended up with this court case. So we've since discovered that the Northern Irish Tourist Board now buy holiday homes, and I think they've got a hotel somewhere, and then advertise it on their website. Well, of course, it's all at our expense. They're supposed to be there promoting our businesses, not buying their own empire up.
Mm. Okay. And, it's brilliant that Paddy, it's funny how we kind of reach this stage at all different ages. I kind of woke up to what was going on in 2001 when I lived in London. And I lived over there for a number of years. And I worked in the city. I worked in the square mile. You can't get closer than the square mile in London.
You're in the belly of the beast.
I was in the belly of the beast, yeah. And I woke up in 2001. And it's amazing. Different people wake up at different times, and it's something that triggers them to go and look at what's going on. And as they say, once you learn it, you can't unlearn what you've learned. And I'm sure Paddy's going to find out a hell of a lot more now that his mind is opened up to what's going on. Because as well as I do, Guy, this really goes down a rabbit hole. This rabbit hole is very deep, and there's loads of different passages in that rabbit hole. And it depends how deep Paddy wants to go with this and what he wants to know what goes on,
Yeah, well, as I say, it's a strange situation. It's like taking layers off an onion. You think you know the onion. You're taking like Russian dolls.
Yeah.
And it really is. And I don't know any more than I knew 4 or 5 years ago, but I know it better. And it's a very strange thing, And I think Robert Menard describes it as information and processing ability. And some people have got a lot of information and not much processing ability, and a lot of people have got a lot of processing ability and not much information.
Yeah. And
what that breaks down to, if you've got too much information and not enough processing ability, then you tend to become like a holy roller, And if you've got it the other way round, you tend to become a conspiracy theorist. And I think we're all somewhere flicking between those things, and somewhere there's the answer for all of us,
Yeah, I think from our point of view, obviously we get a very wide selection of guests on the show. And we have, from medical doctors to, we had Ted Gunderson, the head of FBI Los Angeles on. He's passed away now, but he had some fantastic information to tell us. And we've a number of people coming on the show. So we have a very good kind of across the range information of what's out there. But there are particular areas that myself and Steve focus on, because that's our background knowledge, that's our interest. But I kind of woke up twice to this. I woke up in 2001, about the bigger picture. And then I woke up again in kind of 2008 when I started hearing about the sovereignty and about your rights and about just being a free man, so to speak. And that was another kind of eureka moment.
Well, that sounds very similar to me. But, again, I didn't live inside the system at all. So, the last time I was in prison was in 2000, 2001, 2002. And when I was in there, my wife sent me in David Icke's book, The Biggest Secret.
Yeah, that's the one I read, yeah.
Right, well, I read that, and that's what I mean. It's essentially the same as me. In 2001, I read that in prison, and of course, I couldn't get. I thought it was brilliant, and I passed it round to everybody in the jail, and had the whole wing on it, And then when I came out, I just went back to normal sort of my life, and then of course, when my father died down in 2005, I got bombarded with all this stuff, and when I was in prison, I was always a barrack room lawyer, so I was always interested in criminal law. So, and then when I came out, I thought, well, we're giving our solicitors 25 grand a year. I'll try and do some of the stuff myself, because it just seems that we're spending money on this stuff all the time. And of course, every time I come across these mistakes and these errors, and so of course we then got back on the track of as you said there, we woke up another eureka moment, and of course just got involved in everything, trying to learn everything, and just thought, well, sacrifice is the measure of credibility, and what sort of life do you want? Do you want to be, people who are, we all know people are slaves to the system because we're born and we're brought up believing that owning material things is brilliant. Well, the people who actually run the world don't own nothing but control everything, and so we've got to realise that, don't own anything.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because one of my favourite books, and I have it here, is called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it's all about the psychology of money. And if you read that, the guy says the rich don't want to own anything, because if you own something, you're liable, right? So they don't want to own anything, because that means the system can't take anything off them if they don't own anything. Where poor people will want to own everything, and poor people normally buy liabilities, and rich people buy assets. So it's a great book regarding psychology. So, and what the millionaires do is they put everything in a corporation or in a company or in a trust. So the system can't get at them.
Well, that's exactly right. And you put it in trust, and then you set up. I mean, when I was involved in criminal activity back in the 80s and early 90s, we used to call it long firming. You set up credit lines. So you put £5,000 in a Lloyd's bank account on a Monday. Open up 3 bank accounts in a false name, and then put £5,000 in on a Monday. Take it out, pay it in the other bank, NatWest on the Tuesday, and take it out and pay it in Barclays on the Wednesday. And if you do that for 3 months, your credit line with those banks goes through the roof, and you end up getting credit cards, and they want to give you overdrafts and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because the machine can't understand humanity, right? So a machine can't understand the difference between a Picasso and a picture of me or you did.
Yeah.
So the machine can't understand that. So all the machine does is it looks at the income stream, as we all know about the water and the electricity. It looks at the income and the income stream and the flow and it all of a sudden gives you credit for that. Whereas if I've got very good friends, but I wouldn't borrow money because I know they'd let me down and wouldn't pay me back, and they wouldn't want to borrow money. But they've got credit with me in a different way. You know?
Yeah. Well, one of the things we're trying to do, and I'm working on it with a lady, she's a programmer, and we're trying to get us set up a time banking system. We're programming that at the moment. And time banking is all about your energy. I don't know, do you know much about time banking?
Well, to a certain degree, sweat equity, yeah?
Well, that's it. Yeah,
we've got I've got a manor house in Hereford where people live in TP Village, and we've got people who have troubled the system, and I've got nowhere else to go. I've let them come stay there, and so we've been trying to do stuff there as a community, but there's a lot of politics and all that going on. But yes, so I understand that, and I think that's it's the way to deal with it, because we're dealing with people. All they do is they're the voucher printers. That's all they are.
Yeah.
They're in vouchers, and if we were on a desert island, because there'd been a nuclear holocaust, and me and you decided we'll be the voucher printers so that people don't have to start moving sheep and cabbages and everything around the place, yeah?
Yeah.
And we said, I don't know, we'll give you 1,000 vouchers and you've got to give us 1,100 back. Well, of course, there's an immediate problem. Where do they get the other 100 from?
Exactly, yeah.
We haven't printed it. Well, then, if all of a sudden, after a few months, me and you were living in big, massive mansions, and we found a couple of Ferraris over in Italy that we'd salvaged from the Holocaust of it all, and brought them over, and we were driving around and telling everybody to tighten their belts because money was tight, and the voucher makers would just be, everyone would wise up and say, what are these voucher makers on? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And this is where we are with these people. But we're on an island. It's called the UK. Yeah, and you're an island. We are on them islands, and this is happening to us. And as I said, that guy says it's not a recession, it's a robbery, and it's going on with all of us. And to be honest with you, Alan, I wouldn't want my kids to grow up, or my grandkids to grow up with loads of money and not knowing what we found out, because what would they want it for? You can only live in one house, eat one meal and drive one car. If you're worth 10 billion, I'm worth 5 billion. What's the difference? You know what I mean?
No, well, I know what you mean, and I think, people are, obviously the hypocrisy of the politicians on both sides of the water is unbelievable. And that's what they're saying, you have to kind of, more austerity, you have to stop your spending. And yet they're swanning around with their big holidays and the big cars and the big houses. But we know that anyway, but the whole idea of, with the time banking system, I found out about time banking when I lived in the UK. And when I came over here, I realised very few people actually knew what time banking was in Ireland, and there wasn't really any. And even now, there's kind of there's pockets of, a few people doing it. So what we're trying to do is to design a system where we're going to have video tutorials, and it's going to be very straightforward to use. And people can buy it just for a nominal fee, just to pay the programmer because she has to eat. And then little communities can start using it and setting it up, and it'll be very straightforward to set up. Or we can actually host the time banking service for them if they want, if they're not technically aware or technical savvy. But we're always looking for ideas to try and help. But if you've noticed this guy, the guys with the money, i.e. the politicians and the bankers and all that, it's just, I just don't know where the scales is going to tip. Because there's a lot of people in the truth movement out there, and including yourself, who want to do stuff. But we're limited either through funding, or we're limited through the services that we can get access to, or whatever. And it'd be fantastic if we could, have a system where we could pool our resources in some way. Time banking was one system, but I don't know. Have you come across anything like that yourself?
Well, as I said, I'm involved with Roger Hayes, I'm not involved in the banking stuff, but Roger's doing his lawful bank, and
that's right.
The UK column and Justin Walker, have got the Bradbury Pound thing going, yeah. Which again, I think any alternative to what we've got is worth looking at and worth examining on all levels, because everything we've been told is a lie, has been a lie, yeah?
Yeah.
On all these issues. And so we need, there are people who think they can tweak the system, and others think it just needs completely regutting and restarting. And I don't really know personally which or what. I always say that, I always try and hold the mirror up to whatever's coming at me. So if it's something in the legal world, then I just hold the mirror up to it, and so I issue the same documents as them and do the same stuff. And I think that, that I keep working on my little bit, and trying to do my bit and chip away at my brick, and everybody else is chipping away at their brick at the same time, and we're all sort of seeing light through the other side of the wall,
But it's great that you have the experience and doing what you're doing, because a lot of people, and I take I mean myself as well. I haven't, touched wood so far, had to go into court as of yet. But that doesn't mean I never will. And, what do you say to people who have been told about going into court?
Well,
sorry, just leaving the jolt there. And, we're told, again, this is the knowledge versus the wisdom, okay? So, from what we've read and what we've been told by people, you go into court, and the first thing you say is either you ask the judge if they're on the oath, is the oath in the court today, or else you say, is this a civil or criminal matter. Now, I don't know, does that work? I don't know. Are you going to be held in contempt?
Well, right. What the situation is really, right, is this identity crisis, right? Because people have got mixed up the civil and the criminal. Now, the statutes and acts are one thing, but for instance, if you kill someone, it's murder, but you can be done under the statute of manslaughter. So the way to tell if something's a real law or if it's a statute or act is if I stab someone in a pub and there are people watching and the policeman arrests me, he'll say, "You're not obliged to say anything, but if you wish to do so, bloody, bloody, blah," right?
Yeah.
But I'm not obliged to say anything. But if I lent you my car and you went through a speed camera, they write to me and tell me that I have to tell them who was driving, else I'm guilty of an offence. So immediately you can see the difference between the rules and the regulations and the actual law. Now, what I'm saying with the identity of these things, if you get arrested for a crime, a burglary or anything, they think you're guilty of something, they take you to the police station. And the police, the first thing they do after they've interviewed you and asked you all your details, if you haven't consented to signing anything or whatever, but they'll fingerprint you, photograph you, and take your ID, and they'll bail you out. Now, the reason they've taken your fingerprint, photograph, and DNA is to establish your identity, your id entity, but your identity. Now, where people have got this mixed up is when they go to these civil courts, they think they're still operating under the same legal framework. They're not. They haven't broken the law. They're engaged in consensual matters. Now, my suggestion is to people is to do this, and I think if people will either know what I'm saying or they won't, but they can get something out of this. If you're taken to court on a civil matter, if you're a competent man and you do your diligence, the first thing you do is you'd say, look, if I owe anything, I'll sort it out. But people have been holding up their birth certificate as a legal fiction and all the rest of it, and causing themselves an identity crisis. And as my good friend Rob has found out, that the government actually considers your birth certificate and a reflection of you.
But it does say in the birth cert that not to be used for ID.
Well done. Brilliant, man. Right? That's exactly, well done, right? That's exactly where I was going.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is this. If you go to court for a civil matter, say I'm a competent man and a diligent man, so before we can actually get this show on the road, can you give me the identifying criteria for who should be here? And they say, what do you mean? Say, well, Guy Taylor, this address. I say, well, okay, yeah, but Guy Taylor, there are 175 Guy Taylors in the United Kingdom on the electoral register. How do I know it's me you want? So if you can give me the identifying criteria and establish which one you want here, I'm happy to engage you. Now, we know they can't use the birth certificate as identification. Now, the only way they can identify that legal fiction is by that. But they haven't got it. They haven't got that on there because you haven't consented to anything at that stage. So what I'm saying to you is, George Foreman, the boxer, has got 9 kids, and all of them are called George. So when a letter goes for a bill for George Foreman's house, which they'd have to identify with the correct criteria which George Foreman they need to speak to. That's what needs to be done, because everything under this civil realm hasn't got any other form of identity attached to it, only assumption and presumption that you are the party because it went to an address. Now, I know full well, if I go to try and get number plates from Halfords, they want me to show them 2 forms of ID. And I stand there and say, well, what are you... I had the police come out to me at Halfords a few months ago. What do you mean? I'm here, and I showed them 2 different forms of ID, and they still wouldn't do it because it wasn't correct. Now, if I need identification to get a bit of metal with numbers and letters stuck on it, then I'm pretty sure they need to establish the correct identifying criteria of the person they want in front of them, whichever person that is. So I don't know how many, a friend of mine, Alan Evans, there are hundreds and hundreds of them, of Alan Evans. Establish which one you want, and if it's me you want, I'm happy to engage. And so I think that's very important if people can sort of get their head around that. And it's not hard. It's different to the criminal law. You've been fingerprinted, photographed, DNA'd, and all the rest of it.
So when you go into court, what you say to the judge is, forget about asking for his out because it'll probably upset him anyway, is to say, can you tell me which Alan James you're looking for?
Yes.
Because yeah.
And it's not for you to say, say, well, which Alan James? And they'll say, well, Alan James at whatever address it is they've sent the thing to. And say, well, okay, there may have been another Alan James. Like myself, you could have a son named after you.
Yeah.
So which one? I'm a competent man. I'm a diligent man. And so before we get this game on the road, I'll man, can you establish what identifying criteria there is to establish who this is? That isn't an unreasonable question to ask.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. So what do you think about, is it a civil or criminal matter? Is that something that you should know already before you go into court?
Well, all these things, these are just, look, we do it hundreds of ways, Alan, right? So, I go in and say to them, are you on your oath? Are you on your oath? Well, I'll ask you again, right? And this is when you've called the police and you've preempted them to come in. These are all ways, look, it's just like playing with a tiger in a cage, because once they know, then they really and truthfully, we've had it recently where, I said to the judge, listen, the genie's out of the bottle. You're just making yourself look foolish to us by suggesting about there isn't a legal fiction and all this, just looking ridiculous or incompetent. And so, but it's very, I do enjoy sometimes grandstanding in these situations, which I do get told off for, but because they've been doing it to us long enough, sometimes I think I've got to rub their nose in it. So, all the other issues, we're right on we're right on the fact that they haven't got, they got the legal fiction. But the trouble is, when you're holding your birth certificate in your hand, the government have written a letter to my friend, that Theresa May's office, when he's questioned these things, and Theresa May's office has said that the birth certificate is a reflection. So it is, as you said, smoke and mirrors. And what I always do is get the mirror, and if something's coming at me, I always put the mirror in front of it and say, right, okay, what are we looking at?
So could you use the same thing? Say, for example, a TV license. If they send a request in with a person's name, I know people say you could do return to sender, but for a bit of fun, you could actually send a letter back to them and go, well, which Alan James do you want? Exactly.
That's what I'm telling you. Because what can they write back? If they write back giving you a date of birth and a national insurance number, then they've broken the Data Protection Act somewhere because you haven't given it to them.
Well, okay. And would they, if they write back and say, because the trouble is, as well as I do, they have a habit of ignoring the law, and they just go bailing in because they know if what you did was working, they know everybody would do it.
Yeah.
So they have to break the law, so people will see that they won't put up with that, and then they arrest somebody or send the police out, whatever. But I don't know. I'm just going to be devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, you're right. Look, at the end of the day, if they pull up with tanks and a gun at your head, you might be right in law, but it doesn't mean anything. But the trouble is, they're becoming exposed by all this. And this is why over here the magistrates are disappearing. They're just putting you straight in front of district judges who are whipping up to Crown Court. Because the magistrates were starting to get to the point in a couple of cases of mine where they wouldn't rubber stamp the thing. It just would disappear. And people are waking up to it. So when you look at these people, we know that basically they're administrative criminals. That's what they are. They know they're breaking outside the boundaries afforded them by legislation. They're still committing the crimes, very much like the Vichy French, local mayor working with the system. And this is what we've got going on. So our idea, because we've been pursuing private prosecutions against these individuals, and our idea, every time I've taken private prosecutions here, and the judge has said on occasions, the case has merit, but it's vexatious. So we decided, and this was partly why we built the courts in Belfast, to start reconvening grand juries. And if you reconvene a grand jury and then get 25 of yours, mine, and everyone's peer in there, and we offer them the evidence and ask them to make a decision whether there is a case to answer. Not that anyone's guilty, but there is a case to answer. And if the grand jury, who are all absolutely independent, agree that there is a case to answer, then it's presented before the magistrates' court. And I've been told because there are lawyers and that come in to our way of thinking now, and I've been told by lawyers that they would be completely compromised. Because what could they say? They're operating a statutory mechanism, and you've gone to them with a common law device of that quality. And so this is where we've been taking it. But as I say, there's so many different ways. And, I mean, everybody, everybody's got to do their homework on stuff. And it gets simpler and simpler with this stuff. It really does. Because, as I said, if it ain't simple, you haven't thought about it long enough.
Yeah.
And people have fooled us all our lives. These lawyers have told us the reason that they have to have £300 or £400 an hour is because their work is so complicated and hard. And when you actually start examining this stuff, you start realising that these are, we've been raped from these people for a long, long time. Why a lawyer should get £400 an hour and a guy doing scaffolding should get £400 a week? If the world fell apart, the lawyer wouldn't actually be able to put any value back into the system, would he? But whereas the labourer would. So
well, banks don't and politicians don't. They don't do anything. They don't add any service. In all honesty, I mean, what we said before about we do need a government, but we only need a government to do the administration for the country, not to take our rights away and not to increase and bring out more taxes. But I just want to bring you back to the common law courts because people are probably not aware of this, Guy. So can you let people know what yourself and Paddy have been doing up in Belfast?
Yeah, certainly. When I came over to see Paddy the first time to represent him in court, he got involved in all the common law stuff, and himself and a good friend of mine, Alan, they've been engaging and trying to get hold of people and trying to actually do something in Belfast, do something, not just sit around talking about it. And so what they've done is, as I say, Paddy owns a lot of property in the city centre, right in the city centre, and one of these huge buildings is on the edge of a place called Law Court Lane, and it's a huge warehouse and it's on 3 floors, and it's got a lift going to the floors, service lift, and the idea was to build one room where we could teach people basic modules in common law and consent and contract and tort law and things like that, and do basic modules with people. On the other floor, they're going to try and set up something like what you're doing over there, Alan. Get radio show going and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on the top floor, they built this court, and it's fantastic. They put an English court on the one end and an Irish court on the other, and it's in the same huge warehouse overlooking Belfast City, and it's actually like it's inside a boat, an upside down hull of a boat.
It is. I've seen the photos. You've done a brilliant job. Brilliant job.
And I mean, the point being, if we can start reconvening grand juries, and again, getting local people, local interests, and getting enough of us in a local area where we can start having meetings, educating people, and start taking things back. What the reality of how efficient we can run this place is, and I'll give you the address of it. It's the Law Court, 176 Law Court Lane, North Street, Belfast, if anyone gets that. And if anyone wants to get any interest involved in helping out or whatever, perhaps they can get hold of us. But the whole idea was symbolic. Because we're going around into their venues playing football matches, with their referees, we thought, look, I'm happy to do that all day long, and to be honest with you, that's obviously what I'm here to do. I don't know. That's obviously what my court experience when I was younger was all about.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to do that. But I thought, but we want a home ground. We want a playing field. Where we can actually start doing stuff.
Yeah.
And so yes, and I think that it can inspire people because talk's cheap, and people want to see symbols. And when you've got people like Paddy, and there are a few others around Belfast, property owners who are interested in doing stuff because they're getting raped as well and robbed. And if we can get enough of us interested and start, actually having a proper go at these people, You know, I know Ben Gilroy down your end has been doing a fantastic job and you know, doing the politics and things, which isn't my area, but I know Ben and I know him and the other boys there are full on and brilliant, like. But we're you know, let's get active and let's do this stuff and get into small groups, and you know, you'll find that there'll be people that come to you. I mean, I've got my postman gave me some mail one day and said he'd seen me on Sky Telly or whatever. And so I started communicating with him, and like now he's right on board with this stuff. And my milkman who brings around my raw milk, you know, the government's been trying to close them down on this and close them down on that. And so we're getting all sorts of people, you know, farmers, even the local, we've got in where I'm from, Hereford over in the UK, we've got our biggest sort of local party in our area is the Conservatives have got the seat, but it's a political party called It's Our County, and they're just local people. And I've had a meeting with a local councillor from there, and he's told me all about the corruption that's going on inside, and he retired and decided to help. When his wife died, he decided to put a bit back in the community by getting involved in local affairs, and he couldn't believe that the corruption going on. It's going on everywhere. Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, but we're catching up with them, and like I said, you know, so what we want is simple devices. You know, my game is in the courts. That's what I do, and so I'm chipping away at we've got a huge wall in front of us, a bit like Pink Floyd's wall, and I'm chipping away at my brick. You know, I couldn't do a radio show like you did, so you're chipping away at your brick, we're all doing our little bits and chipping away and thinking, when the hell's this thing going to fall down? Mm. But we can all sort of see light through the mortar, and it's coming thick and fast for him now. I think
you're right. I think there is so many people now are jumping either out of necessity or just they've woken up to what's going on. You mentioned about, you know, people from the inside coming out. We attended a DDI meeting with Ben a few months ago, and there was a chap in front of the audience, at the top of the audience, and he worked for Fianna Fáil in the local party, and he worked for them for a good few years. He stood up and did this talk when Ben was there, and he said, I've worked for Fianna Fáil for a number of years, a long time. And he said, I climbed the ladder all the way up. And he said, when I got to the level where I could actually look at the books, I couldn't believe the corruption that was going on in the party. And within 48 hours, he left the party after spending all them years in the party and working his way up.
Yeah, no, and that's a sad story. You know. I mean, the thing is, I was saying to Alan, because I spent 8 years of my life in jail as a younger guy, right? And so I'm not dishonest. Now, I was done for counterfeit American money, you know, back in 1991. That was the last dishonest act I was done for. I'm not a dishonest person. I have been when I was younger, but I could look you in the eye. I'm not dishonest. And I'm not, you know, I certainly wouldn't rob off my own. But the one thing I can recognise dishonesty. Yeah. And I can see dishonesty, you know, and because I've been locked in cells from Wormwood Scrooge, Dartmoor, Wandsworth, I've been with people like that, and I recognise dishonesty. And a lot of these guys, you know, we were talking about benefits. Some poor girl who's perhaps got, I saw in the paper the other day, some girl who's got 5 or 6 kids with different fathers, and they're saying she's getting 25 or 30 grand a year. And I say, well, fair play to her. She's bringing up 6 bloody kids. Mm. What about some politician who's probably getting 25 grand a year in taxi fares? Yeah. Yeah. And that's benefits. These guys are getting benefits. They just don't realise it. Yeah. Right. And so, and what I'm very wary of as well is, I mean, there are a lot of people shifting into our side now, but there are also a lot of people, my father would say, running with the foxes and the hounds. I think they can see there's going to be sea change, but they're pretending to be on both sides of the fence, and so we've got to be wary. But there are genuinely there's tidal waves of things happening. I mean, I was told the other day, again, you get told stuff. Experience is the only thing I use for the truth. But yeah. I was told the other day that these rubber stamping process centres, which I've had loads of trouble with, but they rubber stamped a £900,000 unsecured loan against me, for God's sake. Incredible. But there was someone who went away for 3 or 4 months, and when they came back, they'd had their account or something robbed or whatever. Something happened. They'd been made bankrupt, and it was a solicitor's company that made them bankrupt. They went down and got the order, and what it was, someone had fraudulently made up a solicitor's company name and put a claim against them in the court and got it rubber stamped. It wasn't even a solicitor's company. It was just bogus. And the whole thing is like, because they're such parasites and robbers, a lot of this, the whole thing's just falling apart. A local solicitor confidentially told me that one of the sitting district judges had been disbarred and was a bankrupt, and he was sat there, and they were disgusted by it. And I just think, wow, where is this going? Everybody's getting a pinch, aren't they? I know it's John Pilger wrote something I read today, and basically saying it's time for everybody just to stop complying, and I totally agree with that.
I think you're right there. I mean, we've mentioned a couple of articles on OYM regarding the debt that a lot of barristers and solicitors are in. They invested in the property bubble, and now they can't. They don't have the money to pay it back. So they're in more debt than a lot of people who are on, just have a house or, their own house. And also, we had a recent politician who, Lucinda Creighton, who was, with Fine Gael. Now, this is just my own belief, my own opinion, my own belief. And but she left the party apparently because of the abortion issue that we have down here, the voting on what way pro-life, and all that. And I just happened to say, and this is what I believe, that she needed a way to get out, and she got all moralistic. She got all her morals and thought, oh no, we can't vote for abortion. I don't like the way the party's doing it. I'm going to leave and make a stand. And I thought, well, where is your bloody morals when the people were losing their house and committing suicide?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. They know that the boat is sinking, and they're the rats jumping off. So I want to make sure that people don't get caught out and think that they have morals all of a sudden. They're just covering their own back and feathering their own nest, and they just need an excuse to get out, and that's what they've been doing, and that's what they will do. And this is again my own belief, I always call the politicians over here parasites, because what does a parasite do? It needs a host, and the host is the Irish people. And if we stop giving into these politicians, then the parasite's going to die. We need a new party over here. We need to get rid of the parasites, because they're all in it for feathering their own nest. They don't seem to care about anybody else but themselves. And the other thing that I said is, when the system comes down, I don't care whether they're in government or they retired from government 5 or 10 years ago. If something happened and it was on their watch, they get dragged from their house into court and they get locked up because they were there when it happens,
Exactly. I mean, this is where we are with it. I mean, it's almost like an Oliver Cromwell sort of moment, isn't it? I mean, every politician in this country has been issued a notification about the Bradbury Pound and asked to speak about it because, obviously, it's interest free, yeah? You know about the Bradbury Pound, Alan, yeah?
I do, yeah. I heard Brian Gerrish talking about it, yeah.
Yeah, so right, basically they're all informed. So what are they, right? I mean, I'd like to go into the House of Commons and say, right, all of you who know about fractional reserve banking, on the left, all of you who don't, onto the right, yeah? The ones who don't, right, you're all idiots, get out of here, right? You're sacked. The ones on the left, the cattle trucks are waiting for you outside. And take them off to jail, because when they know about these things and they don't address it, then they're obviously... They're complicit.
They're exactly. I totally agree. Our politicians are the same, and you go into the politician and you go, oh well, probably over there is the same. We have the party whip system, and there's 5 of them at the top making all the decisions. So if you have 100 TDs or politicians in the party whip decide what needs to be done, and then the command gets sent down to all the politicians. Right? That's not democracy. Right? No. That's not democracy, and it's probably the same in the UK. And I don't care what politician or what party they're with. If they know what's going on and they don't come out, then as far as I'm concerned, you sack them and get rid of them or put them in jail, because they know what's going on, and that means that they don't have any morals. Now, we've heard this through a grapevine, through one politician. One of the lads from one of the newspapers over here asked the politician, he said, do you actually know what's going on? And they said, yeah, we know what's going on, but we're not going to say anything because I'm going to get my pension and I'm going to be retired, after 4 years in government. I mean, what other job after 4 years gives you a massive pension?
Yeah, and feathers your nest. I mean, you're looking at someone like, they're all the same. I mean, look at Tony Blair. Oh, yes, a new Labour socialist guy. He was just feathering his nest the whole way through. And this is what these guys are. They're like, as you said, they're parasites. And we've got to start waking up to the fact that these are the benefit fraudsters at the other end of the scale.
Yeah.
They're all taking from the same, they're taking from the pot. As I said, a girl who's got a load of kids and looking after them on a pittance, then if that's the life she's chose, then fair enough. There's 6 children. One of those 6 children could end up being the next Mozart, Fair play to her. But we've got to start, picking off these parasites from the top. I mean, I saw that video about the guys down in Southern Ireland who did the auction house, yeah?
Yeah, that's Ben and Tom Darcy was in there, yeah. That's
right, and brilliant. I mean, this is what we got to start doing to these people. I mean, at the end of the day, they don't get their authority from anywhere. We know they get it outside the law. And, the point being, as they're all operating outside the law, I mean, the judges and that's why the judges don't sign anything, because they don't want to be liable.
Yeah.
And what I say is this. I mean, I've had discussions with judges in court, and it's on tapes and things on the internet. If I go into court, as far as I'm concerned, why should I be in there with unlimited liability for a statutory matter? The judge say, you're on limited liability, and the prosecutor thinks he's limited liability, like all these solicitors' firms. Well, limited liability is for the mentally ill and children. And that's what that's for. And all these people are liable. So all the way up to government, all the politicians, it was done on your watch, I'm afraid, son. You know what I mean?
That's the way it is. And that's what I say. I don't care what the politicians said, whether they turn around and go, well, I didn't know anything about it. I'm sorry, you were in the department. If you didn't know anything about it, you're more of a gobshite than what we thought. And they should be pulled in. Excuse the language there, people. I'm on the soapbox. But they even after 5 or 10 years, 20 years, I don't care, they pulled in and they got jailed. Did you see the actual video footage of Pat Rabbitte, who's our communications minister? 50 protesters followed him into the pub.
Right, I did see this.
Did you? Right, Pat Rabbitte is our communications minister. Now, we talk about the dangers of Wi-Fi and wireless technology, and they just got 850 million of the communications company for the 4G network, which they're setting up here. Now, we know wireless technology is dangerous. And we've just we held a seminar in the local hotel, and we had Walter Graham come down and do a talk on the dangers of wireless technology. We just did that a couple of weeks ago, myself and Steve. Now, so Pat Rabbitte is now making us all, instead of having a TV license, we're now having a broadcast license. And it doesn't matter whether you have a TV or not. As long as you have something that can pick up a signal, you're going to have to pay for the license. So anyway, he runs into the pub because he sees the protesters. And of course, the 50 protesters go in after him. And he's sitting there as smug as anything. I personally think he was crapping himself, but he was probably pretending to be confident until all his minions and the police came just to kind of protect him. And I think, to be honest with you, it's the time for protesting is finished. I think 50 plus people should go into all the TV offices around Ireland and go in and get right in their face and say to them, you know what's going on, you're not telling the truth. If you don't get your act together and say something, you're not going to get in and you're going to be blackballed in the local community. And just give it to them straight, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the time for banner waving is well gone. I mean, look, when they went over to Iraq, 1 million or 2 million people, or whatever the number was, went to London protesting. As far as the government concerned, just a bunch of flag wavers. You know what I mean? We've gone to that place. We now need action, and we need to be active in whatever way we can do, and whatever bit we can do. Wake up, be aware. And these people who think they're going to get their pensions, well, we're registering common law commercial liens, and they're not going to have a pension. We're going to make them fully commercially liable for all their actions, all these people. And the misery that they've imposed upon us, they can have a bit back, you know what I mean, if that's what they think,
Well, I think we should, if we get the politicians out, they get no pension, they get no redundancy, and they get put on the dole. And see how they like living on, what, €71 a week, I think, something like that?
That's right.
And let them manage and see how they get on. I mean, I've come across this. I've worked in the corporate world, obviously, working in London. And I've met too many psychos and arrogant people who don't have a clue, and they're in senior management, and they have the do as I tell you, not what I do attitude. And when you're a manager and you're managing staff, you don't you have to earn respect. You don't just get it. So from my point of view, that's my approach with. I actually like people management, because that's my background. And I enjoy that. But in all the years I worked in the corporate world, I can count on one hand the amount of managers I came across who knew how to treat people.
Right, and I mean, and they're the ones you can actually work with, because they operate under goodwill, not just stepping on the next bloke's head.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, what I read today, what they're doing is they're going to companies are going to try and get status under the Human Rights Act. Now, this will be very interesting, because when you mentioned about psychopathy there, because every corporation is psychopathic in nature. And if you actually took the corporate entity, whether it be Barclays or Coca-Cola or whatever, and you patterned out its actions, you could declare it a psychopath. Very much like when NPower made me go to court 14 times for something they couldn't switch off. Not even that, a psychopath just keeps going and doing it, and it's to everybody's dismay, and other than itself. And so, if they want human status, then we'll get them all nutted off. Perhaps, I don't know.
Well, there was something I seen on Facebook from the local one of the mainstream newspapers over here, and what they're saying now is that if the bank is harassing you, you get that person's name, report them to the police, and tell them that you're liable to do something and you want their name, because if you go and do something like commit suicide, they're liable, they're responsible, and apparently a judge has come out and said that you can go ahead and do that. You are in your rights to do it.
Well, this is where I've done the thing with Barclays, because what I did, I called the police in on it, and what's happened now is the police don't deal with fraud over here anymore. They give you a piece of paper saying action fraud number. But anyway, I had the police involved. And so the police, I said that the bank manager had obviously been involved, and it was nothing to do with me, it wasn't my signature. And what the police were going to interview Barclays, and then they wrote to me saying that Barclays wouldn't agree to an interview, so they were going to have to do it by letter. And I thought, well, that's not very efficient, is it?
Yeah.
But anyway, they've done all this stuff with letters. And so what you're saying there about the police is correct, and this is what we've got to do, because the police have got to start realising that they're operating, their oath is only under common law. And so all these statutory things are all, policy enforcement, and they're not the same thing. And if you start with the banks, I mean, if you imagine the situation, which I'm going to issue a private prosecution against Barclays, although I've got this £100 million commercial lien against them, but I'm going to issue a private prosecution against Barclays for fraud under the Fraud Act 2006. And imagine if we get them in front of a jury. Anyone, the bank manager, the CEO, anybody, yeah? What the jury's not going to find in the favour of these banks. They know it. And this is where I was saying to you about taking them out to a grand jury and getting them, put in under common law, yeah? And under a common law device. Because no jury, I don't think any jury in the United Kingdom would find a bank innocent of anything.
Yeah. I think, again, you have to look I think every fight you're going to have to look at and weigh it up and see who you're dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously. I mean, look, I'm not telling people, I don't advise people to go and do anything that I do. I do what I do. I mean, I tell people what I do, and I try and keep a record of it and film or on tape or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's only just, so people can see what someone else has done. It doesn't mean I'm not advising anybody to do anything, but I think myself and others, we are, as you said, Simon Spaniard earlier, and Simon's we're all sort of coming to the same place where we realise we need to take action against these people.
Yeah.
And we need to, this is what I was saying about grand juries, because if we get a grand jury together, and, I will take, say, perhaps 20 private prosecutions in there, and perhaps a load of orders that have been made against people to get them nullified.
Well, we need to tie them up, really. Tie them up in administration and paperwork.
Well, right. And I mean, if we can go in there and say to the, I mean, I've had 2 lawyers say to me that if we got a grand jury and 25 people's signature on a piece of paper saying that they have read the evidence enclosed and that they believe there's a case to answer, that the courts, the district judges and the statutory mechanism would be absolutely compromising to having to process the document. So, you know, this is really where we've got to all fight our own fights and do what we can do, isn't it? You know?
I would say I would recommend to people from a lower level, because the level you're dealing on is quite high when you're going into courts. Yeah. But from a lower level, if you have people ringing you up, annoying you, excuse me, like the banks, remember, get their names and tell them that you're going to the police and you're logging a harassment call with the Gardaí, okay? Then tell them that you want to take their name because you're in a fragile position at the moment and that you're liable to do anything. And if you do, then you want the name of the person so they will arrest you because you're the person that caused it because you're ringing me up, harassing me. Now, this is what the judge said, and this is what we were told people should be doing. So you have to, again, there's a certain level of... when you get empowered, when you know a bit of this, even if you only know a little bit, there's kind of that little bit of confident empowerment, you know, giving a bit of crap back, not just taking it and going, oh, I'm going to be in trouble, what am I going to do? I don't know about you, but I feel, because I know a little bit, I don't know an awful lot, but I know enough that I feel empowered that if something happens, I know there's a way of kind of dealing with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's faith, man. And that's because you know, you've seen through the other side, and you know it's there somewhere, yeah. And I mean, this is what you said there is very good, and because you imagine if some old lady's getting harassed by banks or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, from what you said there was brilliant. And what I would say to do is if her daughter wrote to the person who was contacting her mother, annoying her, and said that if anything happens to my mother, you'll be held fully responsible under full commercial liability, and engage with them on that level, yeah, and make sure the document gets recorded and stuff, and it'll add the pressure to it. Because I mean, I don't know if you know, I mean, well, a strange thing in Wales, they apparently, you know, we don't know anything's true if we didn't experience it ourselves, but apparently in Wales, they didn't used to have prison way back in the day. What they do is if you committed an offence, then yourself and every member of your family, everyone they could prove in that bloodline, all your uncles and your aunties and your cousins would all be fined the same. So you'd all get fined 4 sheep or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because of course this is where if you've got a problem with one person, you have to either fish them out.
Yeah.
So for instance, if they're working for a corporation or working for a company, then if they operate outside their boundaries, they lose their corporate shield.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden you can fish them out of that net. Or if you can't fish them out of that net, you reverberate it back on the whole lot of them, you know, as in like, you know, the whole lot of them are under full commercial liability for their actions because they've been informed and noticed the principal's notice to agent and all that stuff, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
But there's always, as you say, we've got to the point now, there's so many clever people doing stuff, Alan, on all levels, you know. And like you say, you know, people like Simon and people like Roger, all different types of people doing different stuff, that we can always get good information of good people who really know their stuff. And honest to God, you know, from going into the perspective of going into court, I think we have better people on our side of the fence than they have, because our people actually know their stuff. They enjoy reading books on law or on whatever, yeah?
Yeah.
They're into it. These people have had all these books on their shelf for years. They've never had to use them. They're getting dusty because they've got a rubber stamping clown, you know, some district judge rubber stamping everything. They don't need to know these things. And we're catching them out, and the more you catch them out, the worse it gets. And
well,
you know,
here's the difference, Guy. I think they have been indoctrinated. We have been educated. See,
yes,
their indoctrination is now, you know, they go to, you know, solicitor class or solicitor school, and they're taught ABC. That's the indoctrination. But when we do it, we actually look at A, B, C, D, E, F.
Yeah.
You see?
And then go and understand why the alphabet was created in the first place. And like you said earlier, like I said, my uncle said, you know, a mechanic knows how something works. He doesn't know why it works. And we're interested in stuff that they're not, like jurisprudence.
Yeah.
So, the science of law, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
And they haven't got a chance. Honest to God, you know, and I wouldn't say this lightly, you know, I'm quite embarrassed now for them to a certain extent, because I like going into, this isn't a personal level, I like going into court now and not taking any paperwork in with me, because I know that on the issues I'm in there for, subject matter jurisdiction, contempt of court, etc., I know it in my head, yeah? And of course, I take them to a place that they've never been before, because they have to refer to books. And so all of a sudden, who's got the authority in the court, you know? I know it, they know it, yeah? And this is what's happening for us, you know? You know, as Terence McKenna said, you know, what we need is a new linguistics in life. And we're starting to use our own terminology in courts now, and they're coming back with it now.
And I like the idea, the way you what you said there. Get a mirror. When you get sent paperwork, get a mirror and then send it back to them.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I think that's so... It's so simple. I don't want to... I was going to say simplistic, but it is, because just, you know, it's like they ask you a question, you ask them the question back.
Exactly. And to the point, I did say, when, you know, back last year when there was all the Occupy movements and these people were getting sprayed over in America, I did say to people over there, get big aluminium sheets, not glass, but aluminium, reflective sheets. And when these guys in their Robocop uniforms are spraying people that protest, peaceful protest, just hold them aluminium sheets up so they can watch themselves. Because that's what they're doing when they're behaving like the character they are that day. Police officer or security officer or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the mirror is a very important thing to see. I mean, because, and as my friend Rob got off the Home Secretary about the reflection, the legal fiction being a reflection of the human, we're showing them what they are. And, very good, Alan.
There's a couple of guys, just looking at the chat facility here, and somebody said about where did you get the details regarding the property tax. Well, it's probably through the data protection. They have limited access to data protection, which we have to question that, because over here, Guy, you probably heard that they now with this property charge that they're going to go through the revenue to get the money if people don't give up the money.
Right.
And then we have water meters coming out, and they're saying that's going to be about €500. I mean, all this has to stop. It just has to stop. End the story. And there's no more being Mr. Nice Guy anymore. Now, somebody also said on the chat facility, why answer the phone if the banks ring? To have a bit of fun. Let's have a bit of fun. If they ring you up, have a bit of fun. Tell them, I want your name, because if I do anything, I'm going to come after you. I'm going to sue you. And I'm going down to the guards now to report you for harassment. And I want your name, I want your address, where you live, because I want the police to know where you... And then when people keep doing that and phoning up, the banks start getting it. You know, they will start to get it. And this is the whole turning of the tables, you know?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what you said there is brilliant, see, because it's, for instance, the water. The water's our water. We pay a company to filter it for us. And put a bit of fluoride in it in some cases.
Yeah.
So what we should do then is say, well, every time we flush the chain, we don't use 5 litres of water. We're giving it back to you. So we start giving them a bill for the water we're supplying them, run off the roofs. You know, and this is the way to deal with these people. If they want to play the corporate game, they've got themselves in. They've ring-fenced themselves into a corporate corner. If you can work it well enough, you know. And we're all, as I say, we're all wising up, and we just don't give them any more. Don't consent to any of these situations unless these people know what they're doing. They send people around. I mean, what you mentioned there, Alan, was over here what they started doing with the census forms. And once you start filling these forms in, then they've got your date of birth. They've got your national insurance number. You've given it them willingly by filling in their forms, for God's sake. So then they'll say the property tax is attached to the census form or whatever in some way, and then they'll be allowed to use the details of that as a consent. You know, so think of it. It's not simple. You haven't thought about it long enough. You know, the simplest things like the atom. You can't get any smaller than that. When you actually run your head through it, you discover these things are very, very easy to do, and it's very easy to empower yourself with the law, because the common law is common sense. and it comes from commonality, what we all know is right. So, and as long as you apply common law, and that's why ignorance of the law is no excuse. It's not ignorance of the statute; it's ignorance of the law.
Yeah. No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and so know the law, and if you know the law, then you know that they're operating outside the boundaries of their rules, of their game, and they're breaking the law.
You know what? You know what annoys me, Guy? You know what really gets on my goat? That these politicians are just feathering their own nest, and they don't give a toss about the people. That's what really, really gets on my back. That there's no empathy there for the people whatsoever. They see what's going on. Suicides, people getting ill, and we had Ricky Simpson on last week, and he had the cure for cancer and other diseases, cannabis. But yeah, our government are just too bloody stupid, or they're controlled with brown envelopes packed full of money by the pharmaceutical companies, and that really gets on my goat, Yeah,
exactly. I mean, who wants to be represented by these people? They're all de facto. I mean, if over here we've had people cutting their throats and stuff over this bedroom tax.
Yeah.
And I mean, in some countries, like in Brazil, over a transport problem, everyone kicked off. And I think a lot of, from talking to people from all over the globe, really, I think a lot of them, because most of the laws are enforced, they feel, from this country, realistically, originally, through this country and through the America, as the armed force for them, that this is where we've got to attack these people in their own way, I mean, because what we've got in this country, the more you buy, the more you want, the more you throw away. That is economic masturbation.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. And a lot of us have woke up to this nonsense, and they've got to realise the genie isn't going back in a bottle. We're not going away, and so they're going to have to deal with it. And I mean, if the Conservatives get in with 30%, then that's probably only 20% of the population's vote over here. They haven't got legitimacy. They're de facto, and we didn't vote for them, and it's just waking people up. And as you say, people are too interested in. I've only got 3 years to go before my pension. You won't be getting your pension, son.
No.
You know what I mean? The way it's going.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Wake up.
It's this materialistic consumerism which they all want us to be involved in, and they, as Einstein said, the people that got you into the problem shouldn't be the people that get you out, because if they were intelligent enough, they wouldn't have got you in there in the first place. So I think there should be a mass movement in Ireland that any time you see a politician trying to, especially when it comes to voting or whatever, that you go up and then speak your mind to him and call him a parasite. We'll call it the parasite movement. And every time you see a politician say parasite, and then after a while, if they're all called parasites, they'll probably start getting it. Well, hopefully they will. And we'll have to call it. I'll have to get T-shirts done. The parasite movement, and that's all. And all you do is when you see a politician, you say parasite. And maybe they'll because like with the guys who went into Pat Rabbitte in the pub, I think they did a brilliant job. I really did, and I do believe that although Pat Rabbitte looked very conceited sitting there, and he had a kind of expression in his face, I bet he was crapping himself, because all it needed for one person to go up and do a kind of Bill Gates cake in the face, or Mary Harney with the old, a pint thrown over him and then run out of the pub type of thing. I mean, so I don't condone violence, but getting a cake in the face and getting a pint poured over you is not technically violence. We're just making a statement. But that's my belief, and I'm allowed to have my belief. Whether people believe me, whether I'm right or wrong, I don't know. But yeah, the parasite movement or the parasite group, and because I'm waiting on the politicians to come knocking on my door, and by God, they're going to get a mouthful off me, and that's for sure. But I do think that especially the people on the street who it annoys me when people are getting. There's still a level of pride with people. In the community, and they're still saying, I'm not going to tell anybody I'm struggling because, I have pride and, I don't want them to know. And they're getting stressed and they're having health problems, and it's just not right. It's not their fault. It's the government's fault. And as soon as you bury your pride and come out and say to your neighbour or say to someone, I'm having a problem, can you help me? Do you know somebody? The help will be there. Somebody will know somebody, but you have to bury that pride and come out and say it.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, these people need a leveler, and so you need to level them for their own good, because these people get carried away with their arrogance, and we've got to stop. We've got to stop consenting to this nonsense. We went a few weeks ago. We went to. We were told there was a local MP, a friend of David Cameron's, and Shami Chakrabarti off Liberty was going to be there. Yeah. Yeah. And what it was supposed to be, a Punch and Judy show where, we had the right-wing conservative mate of Cameron's and the Shami Chakrabarti, the Liberty. I mean, we all know Shami Chakrabarti is a sham in herself. She's, common purpose and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And these guys are just wings of the same bird. So we went there and spread ourselves out amongst the audience with my postman, who I told you about. My
Excellent. Pat. Well, his name's not Pat, is it?
No, it isn't. It's Martin, actually, but my postman, so he told us about it. So we went and we spread ourselves out among the crowd. So when it came to asking questions, they were expecting the usual Punch and Judy, and everyone's going to have a go at and they were talking about the surveillance state, and she was saying basically, well, with all this technology, it's creeping on, we just have to make sure we do a check and balance on it. So we just started hitting her with questions. We had Malcolm from the UK column there filming as well, and I jumped up and I started off very well. I said that we don't need any more surveillance because we've got a passport, and this is our port pass, and this is basically in Nazi Germany. This is what we use as our papers. And I read the inside of the passport, which if anyone with a British passport reads inside the passport, you'll see that if you get pulled by a policeman, you just read the inside of the passport or the port pass, because the Secretary of State has said that they've got to let you go. But when we started hitting her with all this stuff, they couldn't understand the locals then. At first they started very good with me, but then they couldn't really understand why we were attacking the libertarian. It's like, because we were saying, they're the same geezers. These are wings of the same bird.
Yeah.
This is the Punch and Judy show that's been going on in front of you. It's left foot forward. I'll vote for the Labour, and then, that was no good. Right foot forward, let's vote for the good. Look, these guys are all the same. They're all in bed together. You know what I mean? They
control both sides of the chess game.
Yeah.
Basically, the powers are the people at the top. Now, I was watching a video today, you can find it on YouTube, by a guy called David Noakes. It was sent over by one of our listeners. And I was watching David Noakes, and his methods are quite extreme. He said there's 17 politicians in the UK government who are involved in the Bilderberg group. So his solution is, you get to 17 and you hang them. And then when the next 17 step up to take their place, you get the next 17 and you hang them as well. And he said...
Well, David Noakes is a constitutionalist guy. Yeah, brilliant, yeah. I mean, I was at the Bilderberg meeting, not in the meeting, I was in the Fringe Festival.
Oh, you better be careful there, guys.
Yeah. In fact, Paddy came over as well, and a crew of us went there. And it was fantastic. Yeah, fantastic, and it was just... And to be honest with you, I mean, unless the police were very, very good actors, then we're doing things in this country, because the police... We pulled up in the taxi outside the event, and there were thousands of people there, and the police come running over, because of course we were blocking the road, and I thought we were going to get a bollocking, and the police came over, and they escorted us over, and they were real nice, and they were nice to everybody there, really, yeah?
Yeah.
It was almost like they might have been told to behave, but it was a very interesting thing, and I wouldn't have missed it for the world. It was really good.
I loved the way they got rid of the BBC, and there was a big cheer.
Yes, yeah, well, this is great. And I see you've got Bill Maloney on next week, yeah?
That's the plan, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bill, I think my friend interviewed him at Bill, but I mean, great guy. I mean, if we all behave like Bill, then the place would be a different place. I mean, he's doing the stuff with Max Clifford and stuff. It's fantastic. And you see the way they silence all that film that goes out.
Yeah, well, Bill has been on the show before, and I have to give credit to Bill. Bill's a bit of a geezer, and he's bit from the East End, and, it's a bit like the Irish that we do kind of swear a bit. But fair play to him. All throughout the show when we did with Bill, he didn't swear once because we say it's a family show. And fair play to him. So we're going to get him on next week, hopefully. Yeah. And we'll have a chat with Bill, and we'll catch up on the old, the Jimmy Savile stuff. Because, does it, I said to, who was I talking to about? I think it was Brian I was talking about, Brian Garish. And I said, you hear an awful lot about all this kind of paedophilia and what's going on with the politicians in the UK. But we're not hearing anything over here in Ireland, which is very, very suspicious. We're not hearing anything, but that's a different subject matter altogether. But I'm just, I'm hoping we have a whistleblower somewhere. We need more whistleblowers to come forward and talk to us and let us know what's going on. And then we want to expose anything that is going on, if we can do that. But we have about 10 minutes left there, guys. So, tell us, the plan of attack with the common law courts with Paddy and obviously Roger as well. What's your future plans? What are you planning? What do you have on the cards?
Well, this is the plan is we set up our own court, and as I say, we're open to do educational modules in the place. Yeah, only brief ones, so people get fundamental understandings and underpinnings of what their rights and what the law is. Yeah. In the meantime, over here, I've run because every Crown Court in this country has got a grand jury room, and I've run Hereford Crown Court and asked to rent the grand jury room, which they've offered me for £10 an hour, from 9 till 6 every day. So I said I wanted 3 days, so it's £270 for the 3 days. This is how corporate these people are. So, but what I said to you, the whole idea is we can get people interested, and so it'd be very interesting if people in Northern Ireland are up for putting themselves forward. We want independent people. We don't want. If I bring a case against Barclays Bank, I don't want someone doing what they do, rubber stamping it with no evidence. If I don't produce enough evidence, then I wouldn't want people to be saying that there was evidence for it to be heard. Yeah. So we want people that are genuine, that are prepared to sign both a statutory declaration and an affidavit that they've heard upon the evidence. They've heard it and they think there's a case to answer, or there isn't a case to answer. I'm not saying that they're all going to be passed through. We want to make this properly. And so, as I say, I've given the address if anyone's interested in being perhaps a grand jury member or perhaps even getting involved in any way over in Belfast. We're trying. I mean, Belfast is a brilliant place. I've always thought, coming from this part of the world, it's a war-torn place. But I mean, I've spent a lot of time over there with some brilliant people, and it's a lovely cultural place. And I think if we can do things in Belfast, then we can do it anywhere, because this is where the establishment tries to stir up all its nests on both sides of some supposed divide and all the rest of it. So, I mean, and again, the address is the Law Courts, 176 Law Court Lane, North Street, Belfast. If anyone wants to write to us and get engaged or involved in it at all, then we'll certainly try and get hold of them and see what they can do. But it'd be nice to get a home ground, because at the moment myself and Roger and I mean, there's brilliant people over in this part of the world. Michael Doherty is taking actions against police, and there's a lot of us over here trying to do stuff. And like Simon, you mentioned before, but it's no good playing away games every week. It'd be nice to think that we've got a home ground.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree with you. I know Belfast very well. I have family up there, and I'm just thinking there myself. If the opportunity arises, I'll definitely pop up and stay over with the family, and then head down. And I'd love to see the courts. Because, as I say, what you're doing, and obviously the training as well, for people who've never been in a court and are nervous, if Roger or whoever's there act as a judge and they're going to go through the motions, it's going to be great training for people. It just gives them that little bit of confidence for when they go into the real court.
Exactly. This is what we're trying to do, court training. And like you said about Simon Spaniard earlier, we're all getting on the same place. It's a bit like the 100-eyed monkey syndrome,
Yeah.
We're all going to the same place with this. And what you said there, that's exactly where we're going. We built this thing. If we're using it to get people to to get confident in what they are and go in there and go through the process with them, which we are, I wouldn't say this without, being able to say it properly. We've got enough experience in the courts to know where people are going, and if we can help people by training them and get enough, people to stop consenting to all this, then we're really going somewhere, Alan, aren't we? So
Definitely. That's the whole idea. We need to wake people up. I'm just amazed at, and you're probably the same guy, the amount of people that are still ignorant to what's going on, and they're still doing the X Factor, the EastEnders, the Coronation Street, and they just don't get it. Maybe they need to suffer. Maybe by people being in trouble, that's when they start waking up. I think that's, in a lot of cases, that's what's happened. People are forced to kind of cop on and wake up because they're in a situation where they can't pay their mortgage, and then they speak to somebody like myself or yourself or someone, and they go, "Is that right? I didn't know that." And then the penny drops,
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. In Buddhism they say that people who hurt you and cause you problems and harm, you should greatly respect them, because they are the greatest teachers in tolerance and patience. And maybe these people just, as you've rightly said, need something to actually dig into them. It's unfortunate, but I think we can all see people from different angles now, where we looked at each other all the same. There are people, and like they say in the litmus test is 9/11, Building 7. What do you think about that? If someone's going to give me an opinion on 9/11, I would expect them to do their homework. And some people don't want to wake up. Perhaps it's too frightening a reality for them. But at the end of the day, we will get the better of the situation, because the tide's going back now, and it's rolling back fast. And the moral high ground is a very shaky place for the establishment now. As you say, the Savile situation. People do their diligence on their paperwork, and if Jimmy Savile had fiddled with me and you 30 years ago, and we kept writing him statutory declarations and kept bringing it up, we'd have been at the spear point of the campaign now.
Yeah.
Because now we'd be listened to. Yeah, and the same thing with the football disaster of Hillsborough. If it was the people who persevered, and the people who had diligence and continued in their actions, truth will out. And at the end of the day, keep doing your stuff, keeping it together. If you're getting your properties robbed, just go and look at northern Cyprus. What happened is that the Turks invaded it, but if you go there and you get an equivalent of an acre of land, and it's pre-1974, pre the invasion, then it's worth 4 times what post-invasion land's worth. Because I've got all the deeds of my properties, and if the bank had sold off £1.6 million of my properties for 200 grand, but it doesn't really bother me, because I'm the true and lawful owner, and I have all the provenance in the form of all the documentation.
Yeah.
So one day, truth will out.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the karma will come back around. It will sort itself out. And even if you go back 5 or 10 years, I just was here reading the other day that summons, I think it was a summons or court documents have been issued to President Higgins over here. And also, court documents have been issued to the central bank over here regarding what they're doing. And if you go back 10 years, you wouldn't have heard that. People wouldn't have had the confidence or the knowledge to go and do something like that. But now people seem to be doing liens and suing and court cases to everybody. And I think that the people, power to the people.
Oh, no, brilliant. Do you remember when, just by saying on Radio 4 at 6 in the morning that the Labour government had sexed up a document to do with Iraq? Do you remember the hassle that caused? They run onto Channel 4 and they started shouting about, that this was lies and it was slanderous. Now people say, people say Tony Blair is a previous rent boy and stuff. The whole world's changed, hasn't it? People are waking up rapidly to all this stuff, and all this paedophilia with these occult elitists, whatever they are, is I think is going to be the bringing down of them. To be honest with you, well, hopefully it is, and hopefully Bill will be able to shine a light on that for you next week. Yeah,
well, we'll be talking about that next week. And the other thing as well is that I've noticed more and more that there is on Facebook a webpage called 2012 Cabal Arrests. I think that's the name, but on Facebook. And even, there's more and more arrests and people being reported of what's going on, or being arrested or convicted. And even over here, there's councillors being reported and investigated, and politicians and stuff. And that, I'm really glad to see that's happening. That more and more, it doesn't matter how dark the room is. If you have a match, you can light up the room, a little bit of light. And that's what we need. We need that little bit of light, and I think that's what's happening over here and over in the UK. That people are being self-empowered, and the little bit of knowledge is even helping them. Even a little tiny bit of knowledge gives you that little bit of confidence to deal with it. And, it's people like yourself, Guy, and Roger, who are you're blazing a trail for everybody else who's behind. I don't, know an awful lot, and by the sound of it, you know a hell of a lot more than I do. And I congratulate you for what you're doing. And you're trailblazing and, making it easier for us, because you're taking the hard knocks and we're just behind you, ducking and diving and throwing the odd punch in. And Paddy as well, for what Paddy's doing up in Belfast with the common law courts. So, I'm sure a big thank you. Loads of people on the chat facility saying, brilliant show, well done, Guy, for all your work that you're doing. Apparently you're being invited on a pub crawl as well. So do you want to go drinking with you and have a chat with you? And the guys are just, saying, brilliant, fantastic work what you're doing. Keep the work up. And, obviously in a few weeks or maybe a couple of months, we'll get you on. And we'll try and get Paddy on again. We'll try and get Paddy on for the first time and catch up on what's going on, because definitely to have the courts up in Belfast is definitely going to be, we need to know what's going on there and let people know, and the more people know about it, the better. So even if you would come on for 20 minutes on OYM just to give us an update, just give us a shout and we'd be happy to do that with you.
No problem at all, and thank you for your kind comments, Alan. And let me say to the people of Ireland, absolute warriors. I'm happy to go over and do whatever I can in my way, and I know Roger feels the same. People over there are warriors, and they really are, happy to engage in this stuff rather than being asleep. And so, let's get on and let's do it. And I'm happy to come back whenever you need me and update you on what's going on, my friend. Yeah,
brilliant. Well, as I say, if there's any news or you just want to pop in and give us a quick update, you're more than welcome. Just give us a shout. We'll just go over to, do you have a website or anything, Guy, or how will people find out more about you?
Well, you can, my Skype name is If Provoked. So it's IF-Provoked, Provoked. And if they want to Skype me about anything, fair enough. I haven't got a website or anything. I do try and, if I'm going to be a target, I want to be a moving target. So, but people can Skype me, and that's not a problem. Yeah. Brilliant stuff.
And if they need that information, they can contact me or Steve, and we can sort it out.
Yeah. And you've got my contact details, and like I say, anyone wants to get hold of me, let me know.
Brilliant stuff. Oh my God, just stay there for a minute. We'll just go off to a musical break. We'll be back after this. Sorry, that's Yazoo. Don't go. I know it's a quick version of Yazoo, but we have a few minutes left, and there's just a couple of announcements I want to make. Now, as I said at the start of the show, check out the pole shift information. It's of interest. Everything that we're going through now at the moment with the austerity could be just a ruse, could be a distraction to keep us busy doing what we're doing when there's something else going on. So, make sure you check that out and see what you think yourself. There's a good few websites out there got to do with the pole shift. Now, this Wednesday, oh yeah, Alan, you nailed it tonight. Well done, and thanks, Steve. Who, yeah, you better not say that. Oh, we miss Steve. We miss Steve. He'll be back next week. Now, very quickly, there's going to be, for the people in Ireland, there's going to be an eviction apparently on this Wednesday. And Ben Gilroy and everybody else is going to be down there. It's a lady with 2 kids on her own, and the big bad sheriff is going to come along, and they're going to try and kick her out. Apparently, we don't know what time he's coming, so I'm going to try and get down for a few hours and meet Ben down there. Probably bring down the video and do a few video interviews and just show a little bit of support. It's in my neck of the woods, which is great. So if you can't get down to Navan on Wednesday, just for an hour or two, if you're near enough to it, then get down. You can email us, we'll send you the details. If you go to Facebook and you have Direct Democracy or Ben Gilroy, you can sign up. The details will be there. But if you don't get it, you can email us. We'll let you know, okay? Very quickly, Carol Roslin, Contact in the Desert, Joshua Tree Retreat Centre, 9th and 11th of August 2013. A weekend of exploration into ancient aliens, human origins, UFO sightings, and the need to know. Watch the Meteor Shower Through the Clear Desert Sky, featuring George Norrie, Stephen Greer, live stream, Graham Hancock, Jim Mars, and more. For more information, visit contactinthedesert.net. Now, next week's guest, we have, you probably heard Guy saying it there, we have Bill Maloney. Now, Bill is having a few communication problems. That's why we've had to kind of move him around. Fingers crossed he'll be in a location next week that we can nail him down and we can phone him up and we'll have a chat with him about what's going on, the whole Jimmy Savile thing, because I want to get his take on what's going on. The other thing is, David Noakes. If you go to YouTube and type in David Noakes, that constitutional video that David done is actually on YouTube, and it's quite interesting what he talks about on the laws and what's going on and the scams that's going on. Alan, will Lily be with Bill? No, Lily won't be with Bill, I'm afraid. It'll be Bill on his own. I don't think Lily will be with him anyway, but if she is, she's more than welcome to come on the show. But it's normally just Bill on his own, I'm afraid. Sentinel, Sentient one there. But a big thanks to everybody that tuned in. Steve, as I say, he's away on holiday for a few days. He's taking a well-earned break, and we'll be glad to get Steve back. It's a bit like, a bit of an octopus at the moment, trying to do everything. If you want to send an email to OYM, you can send it to info@oymireland.com. That's info@oymireland.com. And if you just say eviction, then we'll send you over the details of where it's going to be in Navan. And then we'll see you down there. And we'll probably, as I say, we'll probably bring down the video and do a few interviews if Ben and anybody else is down there. And lend the support to this lady. She's on her own, 2 kids, big bad sheriff coming out. It's not on. We have a constitution, and the constitution says that we have a right to stay in our home. So it's just ridiculous. But again, maybe we can start this parasite movement, and every time you see a politician, just call him a parasite. I don't know. I'm open to ideas. I'm now going to get down off my soapbox. I know a few people saying Alan's going into one on the show, but I am passionate about this because it just irritates the hell out of me that these TDs know what's going on and they're just feathering their own nest, and they don't give a damn about you or me or anybody else, and it's just bloody annoying. But there you go. I will calm down. I will take some tablets and see a doctor. I don't know. I'll pack my soapbox away. Anyway, coming up next, MSI Radio. I'm not sure who's on or what's on, but it's always a good show. So take care of yourself, everybody. Stay safe. Until next week, as I say, Steve will be back. Take it easy. And this is Alan James. Have a good night. Take care. Bye-bye.
Open your mind.